This is one of those moments where you almost have to laugh, not because it's funny, but because the irony is so sharp it catches you off guard. For decades, the United States built its power by doing something incredibly simple and incredibly smart. It welcomed the smartest people on Earth, gave them a chance to build a life, and then let them build the future. And now, almost casually, that advantage is being pushed away. Not because of a war, not because the economy collapsed, not because America suddenly ran out of ideas, but because of policy choices that are quietly telling the world, maybe you're not welcome anymore. And here's the part that should make everyone pause. While Washington argues, delays, and tightens the screws, other countries aren't waiting. They're moving, quickly, strategically, almost patiently, and the global talent pool is responding in real time. This isn't just an immigration debate, it's not a culture war talking point. It's the early stage of something much bigger, a global reshuffling of where innovation, research, and economic power actually live. Let's start with something most people overlook.
I want to point out two things. Population growth is a key driver of economic expansion, and the U.S. economy relies heavily on immigrant workers across the skill spectrum. Canada has been the leader in that talent poaching that you're referring to. China, India, and the UK are following, but Canada specifically is spending $1.2 billion in a talent poaching initiative specifically for AI, cybersecurity, biotech, aerospace, and medical research.
America didn't dominate the global economy just because it had capital or corporations. Those mattered, sure, but they weren't the secret sauce. The real advantage was people. Scientists fleeing war-torn Europe, engineers from Asia, doctors, researchers, founders, and students who came from everywhere built their careers in the United States and in the process built entire industries. Silicon Valley didn't appear out of thin air. It was assembled, person by person, largely by immigrants. High-skilled immigration isn't some side issue, it's foundational. Artificial intelligence, biotech, advanced manufacturing, cybersecurity, aerospace, clean energy, medical research, semiconductors. These sectors don't just benefit from immigrant labor, they depend on it. Entire research labs, startups, and university departments exist because talent from around the world decided the U.S. was the safest bet for a long-term future. That's why what's happening now feels so consequential.
They're offering a 2-week turnaround, visas that are not employer-specific. They're allowing for digital nomads, and they're allowing for visas that lead to permanent residency and citizenship, and the U.S. is not doing those. We are about a 6-month turnaround, employer-specific. We do not allow for digital nomads, and we do not have a path to residency or citizenship with our H-1B program that's being revamped considerably.
Under Donald Trump's renewed approach to immigration, especially around high-skilled visas like the H-1B, uncertainty has become baked into the system. And uncertainty is poison for people who are deciding where to build their lives. For professionals already in the United States, the rules feel shakier by the month. Visa renewals take longer. Employer dependency is tighter, meaning losing a job can suddenly mean losing your legal status. Paths to permanent residency feel fragile, delayed, or politically vulnerable. For people outside the country, the message is even louder. Entry into the U.S. now feels unpredictable, bureaucratic, and increasingly ideological. And here's why that matters more than people realize. Highly skilled professionals don't move on impulse. They don't uproot their families, gamble their careers, and commit a decade of their lives to a system they can't trust. When uncertainty becomes structural, not temporary, talent doesn't protest, it doesn't rage, it simply looks elsewhere. And once that shift starts, it accelerates. Now here's where things get interesting. Canada has been preparing for this moment quietly and methodically. Not with flashy speeches, not with political theater, but with systems. While the U.S. tightened, Canada simplified. While Washington debated, Ottawa streamlined. And while American policy became more volatile, Canada leaned hard into predictability. Canada has built one of the most talent-friendly immigration systems in the developed world. Faster processing times, flexible work permits, visas that aren't locked to a single employer, clear, realistic pathways to permanent residency and citizenship. That last part is crucial, and it's something most people miss. Talent doesn't just chase money. It chases stability. It chases belonging. It chases a future that doesn't feel temporary. Canada's message to high-skilled workers is very clear.
Over 1,500 scientists right now actively considering leaving the United States, and that is going to cause a skill shortage. It may, in the short term, increase wages for U.S. workers, but it's also likely going to increase costs for us as consumers, substantially reduce the GDP, and potentially leave positions unfilled if we can't fill them with domestic workers, which this administration is hoping is done through apprenticeships, by having foreigners come here temporarily to train our workers.
You're not just here to fill a role. You're here to build a life. That message lands. And it's not just talk. The Canadian government has backed this strategy with serious money. Over $1.2 billion dedicated specifically to global talent attraction in high-growth sectors like artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, biotech, aerospace, advanced manufacturing, clean technology, and medical research. This isn't generosity, it's economic strategy. Canada understands something the U.S. seems to be forgetting. In a knowledge-driven economy, people are infrastructure. They're offering 2-week visa turnarounds. Visas that aren't employer-specific, digital nomad pathways. Programs that explicitly lead to permanent residency and citizenship. Compare that to the U.S. system right now. 6-month waits are common, visas tied to a single employer, no digital nomad option, and an H-1B program that doesn't guarantee or even reliably point toward permanent residency. The contrast isn't subtle, and the consequences are no longer theoretical. Surveys and institutional data show thousands of researchers, scientists, and technical specialists actively considering leaving the United States. One estimate puts the number at over 1,500 scientists right now weighing an exit. Foreign student enrollment, which feeds directly into America's innovation pipeline, has already dropped sharply. Here's the part most people misunderstand.
So as soon as you went in, even legally on a tourist visa or whatever, they knew exactly where you were, and there were a lot of questions about security. So what is China doing to address those concerns? And are they really just freely giving out visas to, competent individuals now?
I wouldn't say freely giving out visas, but they're certainly trying to attract more people, especially in STEM and AI. They will still have to go through a vetting process. And my understanding is that they still will be tracked. Can't use systems like Gmail and that kind of thing once they arrive, but they are still actively poaching that talent and making it lucrative and inviting for people, especially in STEM, to go there.
What does this mean for higher education here in the United States, especially as we think about the impact of international students?
This isn't just about losing workers, it's about breaking ecosystems. Universities lose top researchers, labs lose continuity, startups struggle to recruit, companies delay projects, costs rise as labor shortages grow, some positions simply stay unfilled, and once an innovation ecosystem weakens, rebuilding it is brutally difficult. These systems depend on density, people learning from each other, collaborating, cross-pollinating ideas. When that density disperses, leadership slips. There's also a deep irony here. In the name of protecting American jobs, these restrictions may do the opposite. Yes, wages might rise slightly in the short term for some roles, but costs rise too, for consumers and companies alike. GDP takes a hit. And if domestic workers aren't available to fill these roles, the jobs don't magically reappear. They vanish, or they move. The administration's hope seems to be that apprenticeships and temporary training programs will fill the gap, with foreign experts briefly entering the country to train American workers. But innovation doesn't work like that. You don't rotate genius in and out on a schedule. Breakthroughs come from long-term collaboration, trust, and continuity. Now add another layer to this story. While Canada is positioning itself as the stable alternative, China is making its own calculated moves. China's approach is different. It's selective, controlled, strategic. But the direction is unmistakable. Beijing is opening targeted pathways for talent in STEM, AI, semiconductors, and advanced manufacturing, especially in areas tied to long-term technological leadership. This isn't about generosity either. It's geopolitics. China isn't just trying to catch up. It's trying to redirect global innovation flows by making itself an attractive option for frustrated researchers and engineers. China strengthens its domestic capabilities while weakening American dominance at the same time. Security concerns absolutely exist, and they're real. China still tightly controls information, tracks visitors, and restricts certain digital platforms. No one is pretending it's an open society, but for some professionals, especially those focused on research and funding stability, the calculation is shifting. China is offering resources, clear priorities, and long-term backing in critical fields. Canada and China aren't coordinating, but they're benefiting from the same vacuum. And here's where the political context matters. This moment lines up almost perfectly with the leadership philosophy of Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. Long before entering politics, Carney argued that modern economic power rests on human capital, institutional trust, and long-term planning. His background in global finance makes him acutely aware that countries don't win by exclusion. They win by attraction. Under his leadership, Canada isn't trying to outmuscle the United States, it's outpositioning it. Stability versus volatility. Clear pathways versus uncertainty, inclusion versus mixed signals. This is how medium powers grow influence, not through confrontation, but through competence. And zoom out for a second, because this part matters. Silicon Valley was not inevitable. It was a product of openness. The same forces that built it are now in motion again, just pointed somewhere else. Canadian cities are becoming magnets for AI research, fintech, biotech, and climate technology. China is accelerating its ecosystems with scale and state backing. Meanwhile, the U.S. is raising barriers at precisely the moment global competition demands openness. This is how leadership shifts. Slowly at first, almost invisibly, then suddenly. What looks like a visa policy debate today can turn into a competitiveness crisis tomorrow. The global talent pool isn't ideological. It isn't emotional, it's rational. People go where they're welcomed, where they can build a future, and where their work is valued. Right now, America is sending mixed signals at best. Canada and China are sending clear ones. And if this trajectory continues, historians may look back on this period not as a border policy dispute, but as the moment the center of global innovation began to drift away from the United States. Not because America was defeated, but because it chose to close doors in a world that rewards those who keep them open. If you found this breakdown helpful, consider subscribing. I appreciate you.